All right. Have you ever read something and just felt lost? But at the same time, you get this feeling there's something really powerful hiding just under the surface? Well, today, we're going to demystify that feeling completely. We're going to give you a simple, super powerful toolkit to analyze basically any text you ever come across. Okay, let's get into it.
Black emo, ja dad sleeps necht. Black emo, ja dad sleeps necht. Black emo. Just sit with that for a second. It's weird, right? Kind of disorienting, maybe a little jarring. This is from Toni Morrison's incredible novel, The Bluest Eye. So if your first thought is, what on earth did I just read? You are in the right place. That feeling of confusion, that's not a stop sign. That is the perfect starting point for our investigation.
We're going to treat this whole passage like a literary mystery. And like any good detective, we need a reliable set of tools to crack the case and figure out what's really going on here.
And this right here, this is our toolkit. It's a simple three-step framework. Describe, interpret, and conclude. You can think of it as the setup, the investigation, and the big reveal. This method works for pretty much anything, and we're going to put it to the test right now.
So, first up, step 1, the setup. I mean, before we can figure out what something means, we have to get crystal clear on what it actually says. This is where we just gather the facts of the case, set the scene.
In this first stage, our only job is to observe. We are sticking to what is explicitly stated in the text and its context. You have to fight that urge to jump to conclusions right away. Right now, we are just collecting clues.
So, what are the facts of our case? Well, the author is the one and only Toni Morrison, the first Black American woman to win the Nobel Prize in Literature. The book is The Bluest Eye from 1970, a really critical time right after the main push of the civil rights movement. The characters? A group of black children in a schoolyard. And the action is pretty clear. They're circling and bullying another black girl named Pecola. Now here is a super important piece of evidence. Notice the two completely different types of language being used. You've got the kids' taunts, black emo, which is like a twisted-up playground insult. And then you have the narrator's voice, which is incredibly sophisticated and analytical, describing the scene. This clash is a major clue. Okay, now that we've set the scene, we get to move into the heart of the analysis. Step 2, the investigation. This is where we shift from asking what the text says to why it says it. What does it all mean? This is honestly the most creative and fun part of the whole process. We're going to use something called an analytical lens to look at all our clues in a brand new light. It helps us see all the patterns and the deeper meanings that aren't just spelled out for us on the page. For our particular mystery, the lens we're going to use is called post-colonial criticism. Now that might sound complicated, but the idea is actually pretty straightforward. It just helps us look at our systems of power, especially around colonialism and race, end up shaping how people see themselves and each other. And this is where our special lens reveals the deeper meaning. The children's taunts about skin color, they're not just random insults. They're actually echoes of a dominant culture's ideology that imposes white standards of beauty. And the way they physically circle Pecola, it actually mirrors the technologies of power, like segregation, that are used to control people. And this gets to the absolute tragedy of the scene. These kids, who are black themselves, have absorbed this prejudice. They're using the tools of the dominant culture against one of their own. It's what the narrator calls their exquisitely learned self-hatred. It's just devastating. They're trying to feel powerful by making Pecola powerless. So, how do we make sure our interpretation is actually solid and not just, some wild guess? Well, there are a few key rules every good detective follows to make sure they build a really strong case. A great interpretation needs both a super sharp focus, kind of like a magnifying glass, and a really clear target. It's all about being precise and sticking to one central idea. So here are the rules. First, and this is the big one, every single claim has to be backed up by evidence from the text. Second, stay focused on your main point. Don't get sidetracked. Third, remember the text itself is always the star of the show. And finally, your analysis gets way more powerful when you connect it to bigger ideas, just like we did with post-colonial theory.
And that brings us to the grand finale. Step 3, the conclusion. This is where we tie everything together and answer the most important question of all. So what? Why does any of this even matter?
So what's our big reveal? Well, this little passage isn't just about kids being mean. Morrison is using this scene to show the destructive, real-world impact of internalized racism.
When a community absorbs the prejudice of a more dominant culture, it turns that poison inward, and the results are tragic.
But, and this is so important, the story doesn't just leave us in despair. Remember that contrast between the kids' voices and the narrator's voice? The narrator, looking back as an adult, uses her powerful, educated voice to break down exactly what happened. The very act of analyzing and telling the story is an act of resistance. It gives a voice back to the powerless.
And there you have it. The literary mystery is solved, all by using our universal toolkit. First, we described the scene to get the facts. Then we interpreted those facts using a critical lens. And finally, we concluded why it all matters so much.
Ultimately, this framework isn't just for, literature class. It's a tool for anyone who wants to move from confusion to clarity. It lets you transform any challenging text into a source of real insight and understanding.
So, now it's your turn. Think about a song, a film, a book, anything that has always kind of puzzled you. Now that you're armed with this framework, you've got the tools to start your own investigation. So, what text will you understand better now?